Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure for this episode to be joined by Terry Tucker, all the way from Denver, Colorado in the US. First of all, Terry, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and for sharing your, what I believe is an inspiring story. So please, for those of us that actually don't know who Terry is, who is Terry?
Well, let me first start out by saying thanks to you, Brian. It's folks like you that provide people like me a forum to get our message out. And hopefully between the two of us, this conversation will be impactful to some of the members of your audience out there. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, a pretty big city here in the United States. I went to college on a basketball scholarship. You can't tell this, but I'm 6'8" tall. So I was the actually first person in my family to graduate from college. And I was all set to make my mark on the world with my newly obtained business administration degree. You know, I look back now and I think what a knucklehead I was. I didn't know anything about business just because I had a degree in it. Fortunately, I was able to find that first job. It was actually in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the fast food, the hamburger chain. I worked in their marketing department, but unfortunately, I ended up living with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mom care for my dad and my grandmother, who were both living with us and dying of different forms of cancer. In my professional career, as I said, I've been a marketing executive. I've also been a hospital administrator, a customer service manager, a police officer. And while I was a police officer, I was an undercover narcotics investigator, and I was a SWAT team hostage negotiator. Wow. I was also a school security consultant, a high school basketball coach, a motivational speaker. And last year I became an author, but for the last 9 years, pretty much I've been a cancer warrior. And then finally, my wife and I have been married for 27 years, and our only child, a daughter, is a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is an officer in the newly created branch of the military here in the US called the Space Force.
Wow. I like last time when we talked, and like I'm reading a little bit about you and also listening to you about all of that. What a life. Like, I mean, with all of its challenges, but what a life, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people say, you know what, one of these days you're going to figure out what you're supposed to do when you grow up, you know, so. But I've had a very exciting life. I've gotten to do a lot of great things, and it's been a remarkable life.
Beautiful. And I think, you know, this is one of the things that is very interesting. A lot of times in our society, there's so many different measurements of success and what a typical life should be. And actually being a person that goes from place to place, whether that is work or cities or countries. Like, I've lived in different places, and yes, I'm much younger than you, but like I already feel like I've moved around and I've done so many things, and I lived so many lifetimes instead of this lifetime, that it's so rich. Yet from some of the perspectives of the measurements of success, I might not have that. And I think that, you know, as you were sharing your experience, like being married 27 years, having a daughter, and doing all of these different things, that's so much.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's funny you should say that, because I think success, I mentioned that I wrote a book last year, and the book is about success. It's called Sustainable Excellence, the 10 principles to leading your uncommon and extraordinary life. And it's been out since October of last year. And I've thought about it, and I it's a book about success, about how we can be successful. And I'm starting to think that I may have missed the boat or missed the mark, because I think there's another word that begins with S that's more important. And that word is significance. Success is what we do. We become successful in business or school or podcasting or whatever it is. But significance is what we do for other people. And don't get me wrong, I think you can be both. I think you can be successful and significant. But I'm really starting to think that maybe it's more important, especially today, when we're so caught up in who we are and it's all about us, that maybe the focus needs to move away from success and more towards significance. So maybe my second book might be more about the significant aspect of life as opposed to the success aspect of it.
And sometimes this is just semantics, and this is what we understand by those words. But like for some people, I might think that success actually means having that impact and having that significance and living my life fully to what I want to do and how I want to leave a legacy in the world, whereas some other people might see it differently. So I think that it's totally okay as far as your understanding of it's that, and whoever reads the book, they might get their own understanding. But I'm interested to get a little bit into the conversation. I think that it's important to go back to your life and to touch on your experience of these last years of actually going through cancer. How has that been for you? Would you be able to share a little bit of that?
Sure. I was kind of like everybody else, back in 2012. I was living my life. I had a job. I was actually a girls' high school basketball coach, and I had a callus that broke open on the bottom of my foot. And I didn't think a lot of it because, like I said, I was a coach, so I was on my feet a lot. But after a couple of weeks, when it didn't heal, I went to a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine, and he put some pads in my shoes, and that didn't work. And eventually he took an x-ray and he said, I think you have a little cyst in there. I can cut it out. And he did. He cut it out. He showed it to me. He's like, I've seen thousands of these. No big deal. I'll put a couple stitches in, and, 2 weeks go by, you'll be in good shape. Well, that was pretty much the last good 2 weeks that I've had in my life. He was having, the more frightened I became. And eventually he told me, he said, Terry, you have this very rare form of melanoma that is presenting on the bottom of your foot. He said, I've been a doctor for 25 years and I've never seen this form of cancer. And he recommended I go to MD Anderson Cancer Center, which is certainly the best cancer hospital in the United States. It may be the best cancer hospital in the world. And at MD Anderson, I had 2 surgeries to remove the tumor in my foot and then all the lymph nodes in my groin. And after I healed, I was put on a weekly injection of a drug called interferon. Now, interferon for me was just a horrible, nasty, debilitating drug. And the best way for me to describe it was, after each injection for 2 or 3 days, I basically had the flu. I had the shakes, the chills, the fever, the nausea, the vomiting, everything. So imagine being on that drug, having the flu every week for almost 5 years.
Wow.
And that's what I went through. And eventually the drug became so toxic to my body that I ended up in the intensive care unit with a fever of 108 degrees, which usually isn't compatible with being alive. But fortunately, I survived that. That was in 2017. In 2018, I had my left foot amputated because the disease came back. In 2019, it came back again in my shin, had a couple surgeries there. And then last year, an undiagnosed tumor in my ankle grew large enough that it fractured my tibia, my shin bone. And that necessitated a whole bunch of testing, and they found out that basically my entire lower leg was full of cancer. So last year in April, right in the middle of the global pandemic, I had my left leg amputated. Kind of a very daunting experience. My wife literally dropped me off at the hospital. I was the only surgery that day. Nobody could be with me. So, to have a major limb cut off when nobody can be with you was a little scary.
Wow, definitely. And I mean, and the entire thing, it's like 9 years of going through all of this journey. And I think that one of the things that for me, talking with you and seeing you now and seeing how you actually share your experience, because you're still going through it, is how you're dealing with it. It's that, we can be, in a sense, victims of our circumstances, or we can actually take control of what we can control and go with that. Can you share a little bit of that? How has your mindset been, and how has your energy and your life force been through all of this?
So I guess over the years, I've kind of developed, I started out with what I call my 3 truths, and I've added a 4th one rather recently because I think it's really important, and I'll share them with you. They're just one sentence, but they kind of define how I live my life, how I make decisions, in addition to my faith. I have a very deep faith in God. So between that and these 4 truths, I kind of live my life by that, and they guide me on what I'm doing with my therapy, with my treatments and things like that. So the first one is this: you need to control your mind, or your mind will control you. Because we all know our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. So if you want to do anything, I mean, it doesn't have to be cancer related. You want to go skydiving, your brain is going to kick in and be like, no. The plane could crash, your parachute couldn't open. Your brain will start playing all these scenarios as to why you shouldn't do it. So you need to control that mind, or that mind is going to control you. So that's the first one. The second one is you need to embrace the pain and the suffering that we all experience in life, and use it to make you a stronger and more determined individual. I've had enough pain, or so much pain, however you want to look at it, in my life, that instead of running from it, instead of wanting to get away from it now, I take it and I use it. I turn it inside and I use it as fuel, or I burn it as energy to make me a stronger and more determined individual. So that's number 2. Number 3, and this is the one that I just added fairly recently, is, and it kind of goes to the you mentioned the word legacy a little while ago. It kind of goes to what your legacy is, or what your end game is. And it's this: it says, what you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. So I always ask people, especially younger people, think about what the one sentence people are going to say about you at your funeral. Would your ancestors be proud of the life that you've lived? So that's number 3. And then number 4 is pretty self-explanatory. As long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. And I recently had a nurse. One of the things I guess I left out of my journey is that in addition to having my leg amputated, I have tumors that are in my lungs that I'm being treated for. And the treatment is pretty aggressive, and it leaves me pretty beat up. And I had a nurse a few weeks ago ask me, she said, Terry, this treatment is basically kicking your butt. And nobody would think anything less of you if you quit the treatment. And I tried to share those 4 truths with her. And I explained to her that, my doctor may take me off the treatment, or I may die on the treatment, but I'll never quit the treatment, because that's not the way I'm wired. I will not give up. And I am lucky because so far the treatment has shrunk the tumors in my lungs by about 31%. So I'm having some success with it. Yes, it beats me up. But on the other hand, you kind of have to balance, your life and maybe some more life based on the success of the drug.
Yeah. where did this four principles or truth came for you? Were there something that you learned through your life? Someone told you about them?
I think they sort of came at different points. When I was in high school, I had 3 knee surgeries, and I was a pretty good high school basketball player, and I was fortunate enough to get an athletic scholarship to play basketball in college, even though I had these 3 knee surgeries. And I remember after my second surgery, my doctor told me they took out 25 pieces of my bone that had chipped off and that. And he said, I don't think you're going to play basketball again, and you might not walk normally again. So that was the first time I really had to kind of combat my brain, to kind of work, and control my brain, because my brain was like, you know what? You're not that good anymore. You're a step slower. Other people are better than you. And so that was what my brain was telling me. And I had to basically fight my brain and say, no, I'm still good. I may not be as good, but I'm still good enough to get a scholarship to play in college. So, the whole control your mind thing really kind of crystallized for me when I was 15 years old. The other things, the embrace the pain and the suffering, that's just come from all the pain and the suffering that I've had. And, again, most people run away from it, or they want to medicate themselves, give me more drugs, or I'm going to turn to alcohol or something like that. I was like, no, I'm just going to use it, and it's, people ask me, how did that happen? I don't know. I can talk a lot about my experience, but there are some things I just don't have the answers to, and that's one of them. I just learned that, there are some days when I'm in therapy where I get stuck with the needle 15, 16 times during the day. And I always love nurses, they're putting a needle in you. Well, let me know if I'm hurting you. Well, it's not feeling real good, so yeah, you're kind of hurting me, but keep going with it. And then the third one, the part about what we leave behind is what we weave in the hearts of others. That's the new one. And that's one that I really, as I sort of, in all honesty, probably come to the end of my life, is one that I really have thought a lot about. What legacy am I leaving? What am I leaving, and how am I leaving it? And I wanted it to be good things that I'm putting into other people's lives and other people's hearts. So, they sort of all have come at different points in my life. Yeah. It's kind of a long answer to your question, but it's, they didn't come all at once. They didn't crystallize. They just kind of came at different points. And then I wrote them down, and I literally, I have a Post-it note sitting on my desk with those four sentences, and I see it every day, multiple times.
Yes. And, I think it's very interesting. There's a couple of things from what you shared that with all of my journey and my learnings of different traditions and things like that, I think that on one of the most important teachings that I took from many years of studying was of Buddhism teachings, and understanding that philosophy, a couple of the things that I believe that it's just your principles are so tied to that as well. That is, I think that it's just principle of how to be a good, kind, compassionate human being, and an understanding. In the Buddhist teachings, there is some of the pillar teachings is that there is suffering. We all suffer. Of course, how we experience it might be different levels of that, but there is suffering. Yet there's a way out of that. And understanding this is our experience, but also there's other ways, and how some of those are actually, as you were saying, control your mind, learning how to be with the thoughts that we have been programmed with, and we have all been programmed with. We have those parts of our brain, like that reptilian brain, that is all of the time in either survival mode, and it's just, running or freezing or like whatever it is that it's, or fighting, whatever it's going to do. And the more that I can take the time to have a better relationship with my mind, and to use it and not letting it use me. It's easier to live my life every day, because if not, then yes, life could be very, very challenging. And I always find it fascinating that we have a lot of times, and I talk with some of my clients, anyone that is a client of mine now, it's actually someone that is privileged in life. And I usually try to remind them to keep their mind open and to keep a wide perspective, because there's people that are going through stuff that is really, really challenging, like as you're experiencing, you know, like this cancer for so long, yet you're still like coming and every single day going with it and still living your life and still having joy, still being happy with all of its challenges, but still going. And someone that doesn't have that, it's like, okay, let's bring the perspective back into what's actually happening. Yes, we might not have the millions of dollars that we want, but we don't have to go through all of these hardships. Can we stay and being grateful for where we are?
Yeah, you're right. And you know, it's funny you talk about suffering and what Buddhism says about suffering. I remember I heard this was a Japanese saying, and I really like it, and I've sort of internalized it too. It says that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. You know, we're all going to experience pain in our lives. And, you know, for me, that pain is going to end someday. You know, it may end with surgery. It may end with medication. It may end when I die. But if I quit, that pain's always going to be there. It's always going to be with me if I quit what I'm doing. So, you know, I don't mind. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not a masochist. I'm not looking for more pain or more suffering by any means. But suffering is something that you've got a choice. You know, we can all have pain. And you know, and maybe we're just playing semantics here with, you know, with different words. But, you know, we're all going to have pain in our life. It's your choice whether you want to suffer with it. And people always ask me, you know, do you get down? Do you get depressed? Yes. I mean, I'm not Superman. I don't have a big S and, you know, my chest or a cape. Yes, I cry. I get nervous. I get scared. All that stuff happens. I get down, and we all do. You know, we get a bad grade on a test, or we lose our job, or, you know, our boyfriend or girlfriend breaks up with us or whatever. We all get into those dark places. It's your choice how long you want to stay there. It's your choice whether you want to say, okay, yeah, this sucks, but you know what? I'm going to get up and I'm going to keep moving forward. So, you know, again, we may be talking semantics, but suffering is something you can use to make you a stronger and more determined individual.
Yeah, and going back to something that I mentioned at the beginning, it's just, are we wanting to live as victim of our circumstances, or are we going to actually become the masters of what we can control? And as you're saying, I think something that was really interesting of one of your principles is actually the heart aspect of the legacy and what we're weaving in each other's hearts. And because I think that there is so much of an importance in relationships and in love and kindness that sometimes, because that's a lot of times that's not tangible, then there's no an easy measure for that, and it's not easy to realize what's the impact that we're having. Yet I think that when we actually approach life, as you're saying, like, you know, what are your ancestors going to say about you? What's someone at your funeral going to say about you? That is all based on relationships and love and being kind to them and to everyone else. I believe that everyone is my family, and I believe that that's what I should be doing, being kind to everyone, because everyone is just like me. So I think that's such an important one, that it's not just, you know, about going back to legacy. I don't need to be, you know, like the president of a country or stuff like that to actually have that impact in someone's life.
You're right. And you never know what impact your life has on another. I had an experience with a nurse who, when I first started all these treatments, this nurse was in training with another nurse, and they're probably my two favorite nurses now. And she's a young, probably in her mid-20s, and I don't know, maybe a couple months into the treatment, she was taking care of me one day, and she said, I want to tell you a story. And I'm like, okay. So, well, I don't want to do it right now. And she came back later, and I'm like, tell me your story. She said, when I first met you, when during that first episode, I was going to get out of nursing. I was going to quit. I'd already talked to my mom and dad. I was going to go to work for Amazon, and I was just totally going to get out of nursing. I had a friend that had died that was very close to me. I was in a really dark place, and I was done with nursing. And she said, and then I met you, and I heard your story, and I saw how you fight every single day. And she said, I knew I was where I was supposed to be. And if she had not told me that story, I would have never known that. I would have never known the impact that my life had on her, but it still would have had an impact. And like you say, you just never know. And I think that's important. There's a saying, and I can't think of it right now, but you just never know the impact that your life, you just never know who's watching you and saying, you know what, I want to be like Brian. He's somebody that I emulate. If they never tell you that, you have no idea. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important for all of us, it's not just about us. It's about the impact. It's kind of like throwing a stone in the water, the ripple effect of your life. You are that stone, and everybody you touch, all those ripples on that water, everybody you touch, you have an impact on.
Yes. And that saying, like, dance as if nobody's watching. Like, a lot of times it's like, I believe it's be kind as if everyone is watching. Of like, like every single day, doing my best, being kind with everyone, because as you say, I have no idea who's watching, who's going to take something from what I'm doing. And especially for younger people, they learn by example. So like just being able to actually take ownership and responsibility for my place in my actions. And this is partly why, with conscious action, this is really important for me, is the way where it's coming from, what's the intention and what is the action, and actually be able to live a life that is conscious, live a life that actually is having a positive impact on myself, the people around me, and the people that I don't know, and the next generations, and everyone. So I think that's really important. And I wanted to go, Terry, into some of the things that you talk in the book, and I thought two of the things that I wanted to touch on, that I wanted you to explore a little bit more, is beliefs and habits.
Beliefs and habits. Okay. So, we all have a core set of beliefs, and you could probably call my truths my beliefs. They are my beliefs. But as I mentioned before, I have a tremendous faith in God, and I don't want to sit here and say that I realize there are people that believe much differently than I, that don't believe in God, that believe that this is all there is and things like that. I don't. I mean, I've seen the beauty of our daughter being born. I've seen, I live in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. I've seen a herd of elk making their way through a snowdrift, in the foothills of those mountains. And you just look at some of this stuff and you realize how insignificant you are, and how beautiful this world is, and the people that are in it. And we spend so much time screaming at each other that we never get to the point. I devoted a whole chapter in my book to listening, and listening to understand, not listening to reply. And I know I'm guilty of this, and we probably all are. We're in a conversation and somebody's talking, and you're like, yeah, hurry up, say it, because I want to get my 2 cents in there. That's not listening to understand. That's not listening to grasp the concept of, one, what this person's saying and why they're saying it. We just want to talk. And as you've probably figured out, and your audience has figured out, I have no problem talking. Talking is pretty easy for me. But when I was a negotiator on the SWAT team, one of the things that we had to do was try to deal with a person in crisis simply based on what they were saying, what they weren't saying, and how they were saying it. And that became a real art, a real nuance that, as a policeman, you're usually dealing with people face to face. Well, in that situation, you weren't. And, if you're talking to me in that situation, you're probably having one of the worst days of your life, if not the worst day of your life. And so I'm here to help you, so I guess I kind of got off on a tangent there but the beliefs, are the truths that I explain to you. Those are things that resonate in my soul, that live in my soul. And I guide my life. I live my life based on those principles. Now, habits, I remember when our daughter was growing up, and our daughter played basketball in college as well, she went to a camp every summer, and it was called the Habits Camp. And I wanted her to go to that because the habits that we all pick up, she was picking up some bad habits. And I'm like, no, I want you to go here, and I want you to pick up good habits. I want you to learn how you should be playing the game. And when you mentioned habits, that's the first thing that popped into my mind. It was like, we have a choice. We know how to live life. And like you said, young people especially learn how to live life from old people like me. Do I want to be like that person? Do I not want to be like that person? And that's mostly based on the habits that we have developed over our lives. Are you developing good habits? Are you a kind person? Are you a caring person? Are you a loving person? Another chapter I devoted to in my book, and it was the last one, and they're not in any order, but it was that love was the most important word in any language. And I think it's so important that we develop good habits, because if we develop good habits, we're going to have a good life. If we develop poor habits, we're not going to have such a good life. And I've seen that as a police officer. People make bad choices, make bad decisions based on their habits, whether it's alcohol or drugs or whatever. And then they're dealing with me. And it's not sometimes you tie my hands. I've got to take you to jail, and now I'm really ruining your life. But I didn't ruin it. You did. You made the choice to do that.
And it's so important. And this one of the things that in the space that I work with, we have the understanding that most of our habits are not our habits in a sense. They were created and modeled in the first 7 years of our life. Okay. And that is what, if we never do personal growth work, if we never work on ourselves and try to get this new habit, which we need to actually do work to get them to the new habits, then we are going to be, in a sense, the victims of our circumstances. And this is something that I keep on seeing, generation after generation of people that have been underprivileged or cast aside or whatever, based on their ethnicity or their skin color or whatever it is, that you see there's poor education, there's not access to different things, then they turn to drugs and alcohol. And then, of course, that's what the next generation is learning, and it's in that space. And it's really, really challenging, I think, to get out of that. And it's so incredible when someone can actually turn that upside down and starting to do the thing to get out of that space. So I think that's really, really important. And Terry, I know that we don't have that much time left, so I want to get to a last few questions. Feel free to talk about this, whether that is for the public in general, or for people that are dealing with a disease or cancer or anything that you feel appropriate. But what is one tip that you would share with people?
I think the tip is really kind of going back to my four truths. I mean, they are so powerful for me. And I'm not saying that you have to, that my truths have to be your truths. I would hope that you would develop your own truths based on the life that you live, based on the things that you believe. But I think we need to have those core truths, and those truths have to resonate in your heart. They have to resonate in your soul, because that's who you are, and that's how you guide your life and live your life. And like I said, if you're coming home from work every day and you're hitting the bottle, and your child is seeing that, then you're right. It's just going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with alcohol in moderation. Absolutely. But, when I saw my daughter born, and I realized that I was now responsible for the total care of another human being, I was a pretty squared away person at that time, but it just helped me to really realize that there's somebody else out there. It may be your child. It may be somebody you work with, maybe somebody you go to school with, who looks up to you and you don't even know it. I mean, you do it with a child, but for somebody else, I think it's so important. So find whatever truths you have in your life, commit them to your heart and your soul, and then live your life based on those.
Beautiful. Well said. And what is, Terry, the one thing that you wish that everyone in the world knew?
That you can do, let me rephrase that. I believe that we're all destined to live uncommon and extraordinary lives. And that has absolutely nothing to do with how much money you make, what kind of job you have, where you live, what kind of car you drive. Has nothing to do with that. We are not all born with the same gifts and talents, but we all have the ability to become the best person that we're capable of becoming. I think it's in my faith. I believe that, that I am a unique child of God, that there has never been somebody before me, and there will never be anybody after me that is like me, that has my same unique gifts and talents. And when you think about that, when you think about a God who knew all my failings, all my sins, all the dumb things I was going to do in my life, and yet loved me enough to still put me on this world and give me an opportunity to make a difference, that is an incredible feeling for me. And I guess I would just ask your audience to think about that. Think about how unique you are as a human, and how whoever your creator was, whatever you believe that to be, loved you enough to understand and know your faults, but still loved you enough to put you on this planet and give you an opportunity to make this world a better place.
Yes. I talk a lot about the fact that we are unique. We are and we all bring our own gifts and medicine into the world. And the best thing that we can do is to just be us. I always say, you being you is the best thing that you can do for the world. And I always say to everyone when I'm working with them, be the best version of yourself. Whatever that is. It's not comparing. I'm not Terry, you're not me, I'm not no one else. But what's the best version of me? And that is what I can strive for every single day. So yeah, I love that.
And to follow up on that, if I might, just, if you think about the 10 commandments, you will not covet your neighbor's, wife or goods. It's okay in this world to want things. I want to drive a nice car. I want to live in a nice house and stuff like that. But it's not okay to want things based on what other people do, or what other people have. It should be based on what you want. And I think when you start bleeding over into, well, Brian's got that, I want that. Well, do you want that because you want it, or do you want it because Brian has it? And if you want it because Brian has it, that's the wrong reason to have it. You want to have things, or you want to do things that resonate with you, not that resonate with somebody else. So don't try to be like somebody else. Just try to be the best you that you can be.
Beautiful. And lastly, Terry, how can people find you and follow you? Where can they go?
So I've got a website called Motivational Check. So at motivationalcheck.com, I put up a thought for the day. Every day I put up a Monday morning motivational message, which is sometimes a story, sometimes a video. And then I periodically put up different things. They're always short. They're always quick to the point. I know people are busy, but you can go to motivationalcheck.com and get in touch with me. You can buy the book through that, or you can just go there for a quick shot of inspiration or motivation every day.
Beautiful. And I will put the link on the show notes so that everybody has easy access to that. Thank you, Terry, so much for being here with us, for sharing your story and being an inspiration for so many people, and for being able to actually share this, because this is not easy, and we need more people to share their experiences and to share what they are going through, all of the challenges, and especially as you're going through it with such an amazing demeanor and such an amazing energy and outlook into life. So I thank you, and I wish you all of the best for what is upcoming for you. We never know what's coming in the future, but I think that as long as you continue, as you're saying all of the time, with how you're going through it, then that's all that you can do.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Brian. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. And for everyone listening, I always want to know what resonated with you. What did you learn? I would love to know what from this episode are you taking. And we'll see you all in the next episode. Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.